Hi, this is my creative critical reflection on my magazine Embrace from my Cambridge AICE Media Studies class. So, for my creative critical reflection, I'll be focusing on four main questions. How does your product use or challenge conventions and represent social groups or issues? How does your product engage audiences, and how would it be distributed as a real media text? How did your production skills develop throughout this process? And how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online in this project? So for my first question, a common convention of the magazine genre is the use of key elements such as a masthead, cover lines, a puff, and a barcode. I followed these conventions in my front cover because they help the magazine look professional and recognizable to audiences. For example, my front cover includes a clear masthead at the top, several cover lines that highlight the main stories, a puff to draw attention to special content, and a barcode in the corner. Using these conventions help my magazine resemble real magazines that audiences are familiar with. However, I also challenged some typical magazine conventions in order to make my design stand out. For instance, I used extremely heavy text for the masthead on my front cover. Most magazines use bold text, but I intentionally made mine thicker and more prominent so that it would immediately capture the audience's attention. On my double-page spread, I also divided the main image down the middle, which is not something most magazines do. I chose this layout because it visually separates the page while still connecting the two sides, creating a more dynamic design. My magazine also focuses on representing American South Asians and young adults who are embracing Indian culture in Western media. I wanted my magazine to highlight how Indian culture continues to grow and influence popular culture around the world. For example, one of the visuals included references to Indian fashion being represented in global events such as when Alia Bhatt wore a sari at the Met Gala. This shows how traditional Indian clothing can exist in modern Western spaces, which reinforces the idea that cultural identity can be celebrated rather than hidden. Media language also played an important role in my design. I used a consistent color scheme of dark green and orange across my magazine pages. These colors were chosen because they are often associated with Indian culture and help create a cohesive visual identity. I also experimented with typography to guide the reader's attention. For example, on my magazine cover, I used thick fonts for the cover line, headers, and thinner fonts for the descriptions underneath them. This highlights the main topic first, while still allowing readers to quickly understand what the article is about. On my double-page spread, I made the top 5 title for my list of Indian movies extremely large. I chose this to draw the reader's attention immediately to the section and encourage them to explore the recommendations. My use of layout, typography, and colors suggests a modern and celebratory tone toward Indian culture. This avoids stereotypes because it presents Indian culture as stylish, influential, and relevant in contemporary media rather than portraying it in a limited or outdated way. For my second question, how does your product engage with audiences and how would it be distributed as a real media text? My primary audience is Indians living in North America, particularly young adults who are interested in culture, identity, and media representation. This audience likely values staying connected to their heritage while also living in Western society. Because of this, my magazine focuses on content that blends both cultural pride and modern lifestyle topics. I engage this audience through visuals, language, and design choices. For example, my magazine includes multiple images of people wearing traditional Indian attire. These images help readers visually connect with the theme of cultural pride. I also included an image referencing Alia Bhatt wearing a sari at the Met Gala, which shows how Indian fashion is being represented in global pop culture. The color scheme of dark green and orange also helps appeal to my audience because it creates a strong cultural aesthetic. The consistent design makes the magazine feel organized and visually appealing, which encourages readers to continue flipping through the pages. In terms of distribution, this magazine could realistically be distributed both in print and online. For example, print copies could be placed in cultural centers, bookstores, or community events that focus on South Asian culture in North America. It could also appear in magazine racks in stores that sell international publications. Social media would also play an important role in promoting the magazine. Platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube could be used to share short previews of articles, behind the scenes design content, or highlights from the magazine. Instagram would be especially effective because it focuses heavily on visuals, which matches the design-focused nature of my magazine. TikTok could be used for quick cultural content or movie recommendations that link back to the magazine's full articles. Using multiple platforms would create synergy across media. For example, a TikTok video could promote the top 5 Indian movies, while Instagram posts could showcase the fashion and imagery featured in the magazine. This cross-platform promotion would help reach a wider audience and encourage people to read the full magazine. For my third question, how did your production skills develop during the process? During this project, my production skills improved significantly, especially in areas such as lighting, layout, topography, and time management. At first, I struggled with editing the lighting of my images. The photo I used for my front cover did not originally match the color scheme for my magazine. However, I learned how to adjust lighting settings in Canva so that the image would blend better with dark green and orange palette. This helped the final product look more consistent and professional. My layout skills also improved throughout the process. In the beginning, I followed a specific format provided by my teacher, but as I continued working on the project, I started experimenting more with different arrangements. For example, I adjusted how images and text were positioned in my double-page spread so that the design felt balanced and visually interesting. Topography was another area where I developed my skills. I learned that magazines often use multiple fonts to guide the reader's attention. Because of this, I used thicker fonts for headings and thinner fonts for descriptions. This helped highlight important information while still keeping the design clean and readable. Feedback played an important role in improving my work. Early drafts of my magazine were missing several key conventions, especially on the front cover. After my teacher reviewed my work, I added elements such as more cover lines and other magazine features to make the design more complete. Comparing my early drafts to the final version shows a major improvement in both organization and professionalism. I also improved my time management. At the beginning of the project, I worked more slowly because I was still learning how to use the design tools. Over time, I became more efficient and was able to complete edits much faster. This helped me stay on schedule and allowed me to spend more time refining the details of my magazine. For my fourth and final question, how did you integrate technologies, software, hardware, and online tools in this project? Technology played a major role in the creation of my magazine portfolio. I used both hardware and software tools to design and edit my work. For photography, I used my phone camera instead of my digital camera, the Kodak PixPro FZ55. I chose my phone because it was more convenient and allowed me to take photos quickly and easily. Phone cameras also have built-in editing features and high resolution, which made it easier to capture images that could be used in my magazine design. For software, I mainly used Canva to create the layouts for my front cover, table of contents, and double-page spread. Canva allowed me to experiment with different templates, fonts, and layouts. This software made it easy to adjust colors, resize images, and test different typography styles until I found the best design. Online platforms also helped with research and inspiration. I used Pinterest to create mood boards that helped me visualize the style and aesthetic I wanted for my magazine. This helped me gather ideas for color schemes, layouts, and cultural imagery. YouTube tutorials were also helpful because they showed me how to use certain design features in Canva more effectively. Watching tutorials allowed me to learn new editing techniques that improved the quality of my work. In addition, I used royalty-free image sites and font websites to find resources that could enhance my design while still being safe to use legally. These tools help me experiment with different typography styles that are commonly used in professional magazines. Overall, integrating these technologies helped me create a more polished and realistic media product. Using industry-style tools and online research methods also reflects how real magazine designers develop and produce their work. And that is all for my creative critical reflection. Thank you.